All right. Today I'm going to react to one of my favorite AI YouTube creators, Matthew Berman, and him going through and trying to show off vibe coding with Windsurf and Super Whisper. And so I'm going to show you all the things that V-Now.dev solves.
As he loves it. Let me show you what it is, and then we're going to test it out. And I'm going to make a simple project and a much more complicated project where we build the game Tetris, iterate and add features, and then build an entire machine learning framework to have AI play Tetris. And I do it all without writing a single line of code. Watch how cool this is. So here's Andrei Karpathy's post. 3.8 million views, so it seems like people agree. There's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give in to the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. It's possible because the LLMs, Cursor, Composer with Sonnet, are getting too good. Also, I just talked to Composer with Super Whisper, so I barely even touched the keyboard. I asked for the dumbest things, like decrease the padding on the sidebar by half because I'm too lazy to find it. I always accept all. I don't read the diffs. When I get error messages, I just copy paste them in with no...
We call that YOLO mode, always accept all, and that will become the default way I think most people will code. A lot of devs will disagree with me, but I think as the models get better, this stuff is just going to be pretty natural. And also, as Andre talks about in this post, you can get to a point where you end up not understanding the code underneath. One of the things we're trying to do at V-Now.dev is make sure that the code is all production quality and very easy to work with. But that's a common problem now with a lot of the prototyping tools is you start iterating and 6-7 turns of the crank, you have no idea what is happening, and it's just accept all, and there's no way to be able to debug. So yeah, YOLO mode.
No comments. Usually that fixes it. The code grows beyond my usual comprehension. I'd have to really read through it for a while. Sometimes the LLMs can't fix a bug, so I just work around it and ask for random changes until it goes away. It's not too bad for throwaway weekend projects, still quite amusing. All right, we're gonna test it out. Today, I have a slightly different stack. We're gonna be using Windsurf instead of Cursor, and I'm gonna be using Super Whisper, just like Andrei Karpathy. Now, for those of you not familiar, Super Whisper is a speech-to-text AI tool that works incredibly well. All right, so let's test it out. We're gonna be using O3 Mini with medium reasoning. And so here we go. I'm gonna open up Super Whisper, and we're gonna get started. Build me a login authentication page. Okay, there it is. Build me a login authentication page. Let's hit enter. Okay, so it's generating. All right, so that was really fast. I'll create a small...
Okay, so right here, you see in the project outlines, it says create a small Flask project. And if you're kicking off auth with login, you probably do not want a Flask app. You probably want a Next.js project, or you'd want to start with the front end framework, and then you'd use something like Flask as a back end framework. So this is going to be one of those where demo, it's going to work no problem. No way you are going to use this for your production app. That would just be a kind of an odd choice. But AI here doesn't really have the context, and it would be a lot more work to start with the front end project. And so it's just going to kick off with Flask. But here, this would be this is like a design choice where it's like you don't think anything of it. You're vibe coding, whatever, ship it, and then what happens is you're going to want to add more things down the if you're going to add a normal good front end experience, doing this with Flask is going to be pretty rough.
Small Flask project that includes a login authentication page. Here's what I'll set up. Okay, good. README app.py, all good. Now I'll create those files for you. So they should be created. Okay, please create it. So git repository.
V-Now.dev is going to be default always. Create the files. We'll never ask for, hey, you gotta, get permission. Obviously the person just wants the files created.
Repositories found in the parent folder of the workspace. Here we go. So would you like to open the repositories? Yes. Then do you want to install the recommended Python extension? Sure. Let's go ahead and do that. This is the first time I'm using Windsurf, which is why I have to do this. I'm going to accept all changes, not even think about it. Look at all that code that was already written. All right, now let's just ask it to spin up a server. Let's see if it can even do.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Spin up a server. You obviously, if you're running this, you want a server. So you should just have the runtime figured out. V-Now.dev will just make sure it is running always. There's no reason to have to additionally prompt for that and to spin it up. Like you should see the experience first and code hidden behind that second where you can edit.
Do that. Spin up a server to get this app running. All right, open the terminal. So it's telling me to do that. So let's do this.
A lot of copy pasta here. No need. V-Now.dev. We'll just apply the changes.
CD. Boom. Set a venv. Activate it. Great. We're gonna install the
Venv is awesome, but it's a pain for non-devs to have to work with that stuff. That setup is always can be a little gnarly, and so V-Now.dev basically isolates a runtime per project and has this all figured out.
all the requirements. Fine. This is all just copy paste. I'm not even thinking at all. There
He's
we go.
doing too much work.
All right, so we ran into our first issue. So I'm literally just gonna copy it, put it into here, and hit enter.
One of the things as well, V-Now.dev has ability to understand the runtime errors, and basically we just take those errors, pipe it back to the best model, and then we just default cycle through and fix changes. So like this copy pasta in between as well should not exist. It should just work.
Okay, one file needs review. I'm not even gonna review it, accept all. All right, so I'm simply going to install the requirements again, just do exactly what it says, and app.py, and there we go, it worked. Okay, now we're going to open up, there it is. So we have a username and password login page, but let's not stop there. Let's keep going. Now add Google authentication to this page. And this is kind of nice with Cascade, with Windsurf, you can actually make changes to the entire project instead of just one file at a time.
V-Now.dev can do that, of course. And so we look at all the code for the entire repository and just make all the changes. And so you need the full context with the best model to basically have the best results. And so, yeah, this is something that like a lot of the code editors get wrong. They just look at the one file or a very small subset. And V-Now.dev looks at all the files, all the code, so that we can use have the best results. I think it's worth paying more for the tokens for the best models, so that you don't run into these little issues.
Which is a little bit different than Cursor.
The other thing here is that he's adding Google Auth now, and you probably don't want to just slap that on. You probably want to use an auth provider like Clerk or Okta or something like that, so that you don't have to worry about that. Devs hate auth is a complicated thing. You may want single sign-on, you want to add login with Facebook or Google or whatever. And so we just set up a project already with Clerk so that you don't have to worry about this stuff. So, this is going to be again, this will work for a demo. Painful to manage later, though.
Okay, so we got an error, but it's not done editing, so I'm just going to wait. Okay, not even going to look at the diff, not going to look at the changes. We're just going to look at the results and see if it worked. Okay, to complete your setup, update your dependencies by adding Flask. Great. All right, so I opened up the folder and it restarted Windsurf. So I'm kind of in this weird state where changes were made, but not all of them. Let's just see what happens and I'll have it fix it for us. All right.
Yeah, and so that's like a very normal dev issue. Not a problem if you know what you're doing, but it can be a pain. And so V-Now.dev just automatically writes git commits for every single AI code change. And so you never have to worry about this stuff. It just works in the background.
All right. No module found, Flask. All right, so I'm simply going to copy paste the error. I already know what it is. I'm not in the right conda environment, but let's see if it tells me how to do it.
Runtime issues in Python. That is going to be the name of the game for most people watching and trying to vibe code. You're going to run into that every single project. And easy problem to solve, and V-Now.dev just takes that and just understands the right Python version, always does pip installs and make sure that the environment is up to date so that you never have to deal with this.
Correctly. No, it didn't. Okay, so I'm just going to activate the venv right here. We're back in there now, Python app.py, and I don't have this Flask dance. Okay, so it looks like I still have the same issue. Copy paste. Of course, Python environment management is the thing that trips me up here. Of course it is. All right, so let's install Flask dance. Done. Let's try to run it again. Again, very little thinking, just kind of copy pasting, looking over it, and we got it going. Okay, let's head back here.
We're 5 minutes in for him cycling through, and he's a developer. I know he's done some software, and so All of this should have been a one click. And so when you click, let's just bring up this one, you were to click this button, what's happening in the background is basically all the same things that we just talked about, warming up the sandbox. So what's happening in the background is it's actually looking at the code to understand, okay, this is the Python environment, stand up a runtime, pip install, get everything kind of queued up. And so you should never have to deal with any of that stuff. So we were 5 minutes in, right, to getting all this stuff working. And this should just happen in like 30 seconds. And so it'll be done here in a minute. Boom, already up. And again, it's the same process that you just saw Matthew just work in the background. So all of that basically just to get to like the starting point should be a one click, not 5 minutes of conda and venv and pip install and all this extra crap. Keep going.
Refresh the page, and it does not have the Google button yet. Thanks to the sponsor of this segment, Langtrace.
All right, we'll skip this part. We don't need any video, any sponsors here. Okay.
Google authentication button, although the code is there. Hit enter. So, by the way, if you've never coded before, you can do this. This is easy. All right, so let's walk through a few possibilities. Confirm that the Google Blueprint is properly registered in your application. How do I properly register Google Blueprint? Do it for me. Okay, let's see if it's actually able to do this. Okay, so it did add a bunch of code. And of course, I'm just gonna accept all. Okay, so
you probably see in the code there, you have all these Google client IDs, all this good stuff, which can be complicated. And so V-Now.dev, because we use the best auth providers, all this is just abstracted, super easy to walk through and just add these. And then once you sync these values across your project, every time you start up the project, it'll already be ready, sync to the background. So all this stuff is just taken care of.
It says that I should see the login/Google endpoint, which if I enter it there, I
do. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not on the page. And it's probably that the Windsurf does not have browser access here. And so what's happening is basically in the background, AI code is being written, and yet it doesn't actually know that there are changes on the front end that it's not able to see to confirm. And so it's writing some changes, just seeing the code, but it doesn't have that feedback loop with the browser. And so V-Now.dev has both basically the console logs of like what's happening behind the browser to be able to feed back in, as well as the runtime logs. And we'll be adding basically this screenshotting ability. So it'll auto screenshot, pull that screenshot in for UI elements to understand how it all looks. And so like this is like an obvious, like we wanted to add the button. There's, it thinks it added the button, but you can see there's no button. So easy change. V-Now.dev just already handles that.
But I don't see the button. All right, so I'm definitely doing something wrong here, but I'm trying not to think too much about it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take a screenshot. Okay, so this model does not support images. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna switch the model. So we're gonna switch to Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I'm gonna say...
Now he's switching models, right? And you gotta do that. And now you have to figure out, okay, which model is the best at what? And so another thing we do is V-Now.dev understands which models are best at which tasks, which have image capabilities, which don't, right? And again, you don't have to think about it. You add a screenshot, you add code context, I want to do this. V-Now.dev already knows which model is the best at specific tasks. All you got to do is vibe code. None of this.
I don't see the Google auth button on this page. Please add it here. And I guess I should have just spoken that, but that's okay. I see the issue. You're using a template for the login page. Let me check the template. Great. So now we're using a different model. Maybe this model is going to be better. Okay, it definitely feels a little bit slower.
If you can see as well in the Windsurf here, it searched in one file, analyzed one file. And one of the problems with this is oftentimes you want to share code between components, between files. And so if you're only looking in one file, you may solve the problem in one file, and yet you actually want to be able to reuse components across many files. And this is something that, again, like a lot of the current AI tools, they can do to some degree, but they don't have all the code context or all the right code context. And so that again is something that V-Now.dev, we want the output to be the best. And so we use as much of the code as possible. And even though it ends up being more token expensive, you end up getting better results, and that's what we're after. So if you're trying to be, use the fewest tokens from a cost perspective, use the other platforms, but you're probably going to end up with crap code, or you're going to end up with, duplicate components, because it's going to make another one every single time instead of being able to reuse stuff. So that's just another difference.
I'm just going to accept.
And a developer would never just look at, would never solve the problem in the one file. They'd always look across the whole code base and have that kind of in our heads to be able to work with.
That's all. And there it is. Okay.
You can see like even, the button looks totally different. It's red. It probably doesn't even have the context of the other button. So that's again, difference right now between how these prototyping tools work than a developer. So we're trying to basically be as close to how a developer works, but in browser and with voice. So it's vibe coding, but professional, kind of like exactly how a developer works in the background. That's how it should be.
So it doesn't look great, little broken image there, but fine, that's good enough. All right, so next we're going to have it write the game Tetris, and then we're going to try to get it to use some machine learning to play it itself.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video here then, because it looks like he's going off and doing like a little game thing, which you could use V-Now.dev to basically write that game in the background and then serve that on a website. But my guess is most people aren't trying to build little like Tetris games. Like that's just kind of like a cool, can AI do this task, and not like a production app, type deal. So yeah, it seems like he ran into a slew of issues, and V-Now.dev, the biggest difference is that one, it ends up with all the runtime stuff, all the Git integrations, everything sorted for you, so you never have to deal with any of that crap. We also have self-healing, so if you saw Matthew run into a couple errors, copy paste, all this stuff, AI will just automatically loop through and fix those problems, and you should never have to have like runtime, Python version hell, all that stuff in the background. V-Now.dev will just solve all that for you, and then automatically sync everything to GitHub. Because one of the other problems here is that a lot of people saw this on Twitter. Somebody made a project, worked on it for like 4 months, forgot to sync it to Git, and then it's gone when they accidentally deleted it. And that's something, you'd be surprised, but developers, we make that mistake too. We forget to save all this, all those sorts of things. And so V-Now.dev will automatically make sure all that stuff is synced to GitHub in the cloud, and so you'd never have to worry about like losing code or losing progress or anything like that. So yeah, I think the current state of vibe coding is this is the future, 100%. What he's using, voice, look at accepting all on a lot of these code changes as the AI models get better, but the starting points are wrong, and a lot of the runtime stuff that does not need to be an issue. So please go join the waitlist here on V-Now.dev. And hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll make sure you guys get first access to the waitlist so that you can get all the fun stuff and none of the bad stuff. So appreciate it.